Today's lesson is Bacteria, Nature's Unlikely Cleaner. Hello, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to be talking about a nasty substance that floats around. It gets in our food, it gets in our bodies, and it causes all sorts of problems. No, I'm not really talking about the virus. I'm talking about something similar. I'm talking about bacteria.
Absolutely. It's amazing how our attitude or our opinions of bacteria has changed. When I was a kid, of course, it was a bad thing. You'd always have to wash your hands or take antibiotics if you were sick. Well, those things are still true, but now we also appreciate and understand more about the good things about bacteria, probiotics, eating yogurt for good health, all that sort of positive or helpful, healthy bacteria. And as we're going to read in today's article, we can use bacteria in some amazing ways, some very surprising ways, even to clean great works of art.
Indeed, something that cleans something can be referred to as a cleaner. So it seems that bacteria is nature's unlikely cleaner. You'd never expect bacteria to be used in this way. So let's find out what this is all about. Let's listen now to the first part of our lesson, and then we'll be right back.
Bacteria, nature's unlikely cleaner. What's the first thing that springs to mind when you think of bacteria? For most of us, the answer is disease and the need to regularly wash our hands to protect ourselves. But did you know bacteria can actually function as a cleaner? In fact, art conservators are using these bacteria to restore marble works by Michelangelo at the family tomb of Pope Clement VII.
大家好。第一部分我们看到单字 conservator， 这个字是名词，指文物或是艺术品修复师或是保护员。例如 My cousin is a conservator of sculpture at an art museum. 我表姐是一间美术馆内的雕像修复师。另外补充这个字的形容词 conservative, C-O-N-S-E-R-V-A-T-I-V-E, conservative, 指保守的、传统的或是守旧的。举例来说Although Rachel's family is very conservative, she has different views. 虽然 Rachel 的家人非常保守，但她有不同的见解。
Okay, again, we're talking about bacteria, and there are various kinds of germs out there. Germ is a general term for these pathogens that cause trouble. They're microscopic. Some people debate whether viruses are living or not, but yes, germs include bacteria and viruses.
That's right. So when we think of bacteria, we think of basically a very small, single-celled animal that can do good and bad. But as we said, often bacteria is associated with getting sick or being dirty or something like that. But we're going to learn that it can actually be nature's unlikely cleaner, a very surprising cleaner that comes from nature. So not a cleaner made of chemicals like we might make most of them from. This is bacteria can clean things, and it's all natural. So let's look at the first sentence. It's a question, just to get us thinking as we begin our article. What's the first thing that springs to mind when you think of bacteria? So basically, when something springs to mind, it pops into your mind. We're just asking, what's the first thing that you think of or that pops into your mind when you think of bacteria? And yeah, for most of us, it says the answer is disease and the need to regularly wash our hands to protect ourselves. Sure, bacteria is dirty. You gotta wash your hands, clean your house, scrub things, use bleach, all that kind of stuff. That's what we think, is good for us and good to keep bad bacteria away from us.
Yep, that's the question. What's the first thing that springs to mind? You could also say, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What do you think of when somebody mentions bacteria? The first word that popped into my mind was E. coli, which is a bad kind of bacteria, yes. Indeed. So most of us probably think it has something to do with disease. And because of that, because we know bacteria is all around us, we need to wash our hands regularly to protect protect ourselves, not only from the bacteria, but also from viruses and other nasty stuff out there. But did you know bacteria can actually function as a cleaner? It can actually be used as something to clean something else.
So there you go, an interesting fact that's also getting us thinking and leading us into the main topic of the article. Did you know that bacteria can function or can work or can be used as a cleaner? Yeah, something that we clean things with, cleaning lotions, soaps, bleach. This is the type of thing when we think of cleaners. And actually, we're going to learn that that's what art conservators are using to restore marble works by Michelangelo at the family tomb of Pope Clement VII. So there you go. This isn't just sort of an idea in science. This is a fact in science. It's actually happening. Art conservators, these are people who take care and restore and maintain old works of art. To conserve something is to kind of save it or preserve it or protect it in some kind of way. So the people who work at museums and other places like that who are cleaning paintings, making sure that time doesn't damage them too much, the environment doesn't damage them too much. They're keeping these works safe and beautiful for future generations. So these people, these art experts, are using bacteria to restore marble works by Michelangelo at the family tomb of Pope Clement VII. This is a famous work by the famous Renaissance artist Michelangelo, who did a lot of work in marble, didn't he?
He certainly did, and of course these works of art, these sculptures, are quite old, and of course they are not immune to disease and mold and stuff like that. I don't suppose a statue can get sick, but you get my idea there. They can get dirty, and when they're exposed to the air and things like that, and bacteria and other things can start growing on them. I guess maybe they're worried about mold, perhaps, but again, they're made from marble, and of course marble is a kind of rock that you find in Taroko Gorge here in Taiwan. And a tomb, of course, is where someone is buried. It's more formal, like my grandparents. They're not really buried in a grave. I mean, they are buried in a grave, but they're not buried in a tomb. Okay, a tomb is much larger, and it's usually for someone important.
That's right. A tomb will actually be like a structure, a small building of some kind, and maybe you put the remains, the coffin or whatever, inside the tomb, this small building. And of course, a pope, being a very important person, would definitely have a tomb. So yes, time, the weather, the environment, probably even like tourists breathing on the marble, all of these things can damage it over hundreds of years. And it is hundreds of years old, and we'll learn all about that in the second part of our article.
Those charged with returning the 600-year-old structure to its original state began by testing the surfaces to determine what substances had built up over the centuries. Then they selected types of bacteria that could literally eat away stains and residue made up of those compounds. Unlike many chemical cleaning products, the bacteria are completely safe for people and don't damage the original material.
第二部分我们看到副词 literally 指真正的、确实的或是按照字面的。例如 Wendy was literally the first person to arrive at the party. Wendy 真的是第一个抵达派对的人。或是 I didn't mean I could literally eat a whole cow. That's just a saying. 我不是真的可以吃掉整头牛，这只是个比喻。再来我们看到单字 residue， 这个字是名词，指残留物或是剩余部分。例如The FDA tests food to see if the amount of pesticide residue is within accepted limits. 美国食品药品管理局检测食物，查看农药残留量是否在可接受范围内。另外补充一个相关名词 sediment, S-E-D-I-M-E-N-T, sediment, 指沉积物或是沉淀物。我们可以说 Over centuries, the buildup of sediment changed the course of the river. 数百年来，沉积物的积累改变了这条河的航道。
Okay, let's continue with the second part of our lesson for today. Those charged with returning the 600-year-old structure to its original state began by testing the surfaces to determine what substances had built up over the centuries. So again, we've got people who are responsible for working on this structure, on these marble statues. If you're charged with something, you are responsible for that. Someone has given you that job, and they want to return this very old structure to its original state or condition. So they need to figure out how they're going to do that. So they tested the surfaces to find out or to determine what sorts of things had built up over the centuries. Yes, was it a bunch of dust, layers of dust, or was it mold, as I said, or maybe something else?
Interesting, so that they can choose the right type of cleaner for the right type of bacteria or dirt or whatever they're trying to clean off. That's a good way of going about it. Then it says, then they selected types of bacteria that could literally eat away stains and residue made up of those compounds. So there you go. It's sort of mixing and matching or selecting very carefully the type of bacteria, the type of cleaner in this case, that will literally eat away stains and residue made up of those compounds. So they're basically using natural things to clean instead of using chemicals and other types of cleaners. So this bacteria, it says, will literally eat away stains. I mean, that's funny that we should say that, because often in advertising for cleaners and soaps, it will say, it eats away the grease on your dirty dishes or something like that. Well, bacteria, being a living creature, actually does eat the things that it's trying to clean. That's why they've selected these bacteria. They are hungry. They have an appetite for whatever dirt or other things are on the surface of this marble. So it's not just cleaning it and eating it away the way we might use it in a more sort of imaginative way. It is literally, that's why we use this word literally, it is exactly that. We're not using eat away in any sort of representative sort of way. We're not using it as a comparison. We are actually saying these will actually eat away the stains and residue made up of those compounds. Residue is basically what's left behind. If you think of a dirty plate with a little bit of food stuck to it, that's residue. If you think of when you wash something and you don't get it quite clean enough, there's a little bit of soap you can still see on the surface. That is soap residue. So basically what's left on the marble, this bacteria will actually eat it away because it has an appetite for those compounds.
But compounds, of course, are kinds of chemicals that are together. They could be chemical compounds with different atoms and molecules all mixed together there. So, of course, that's what this residue is made up of. That's what constitutes the residue. That's what's actually there in those compounds. So, again, they experimented with some kinds of bacteria and see if they would actually eat away all those stains and the residue from those compounds. And unlike many chemical cleaning products, the bacteria are completely safe for people and don't damage the original material. We should mention that bacteria is a plural noun, so we would say are. The bacteria are completely safe. So, of course, they don't want to damage the artwork and they don't want to harm people and be sued and have lawsuits and stuff like that. So they're going to make sure that they're going to use bacteria that are totally safe for people, and then they won't damage the original material, which is marble.
Very, very interesting. And we'll learn a little bit more about this and hear from one of the art experts using bacteria as a cleaner in the third and final part of the article.
It's better for our health, for the environment, and for the works of art, said Daniela Manna, who worked on the project. Her team is not alone in choosing this unusual method. Restoration efforts on the Milan Cathedral and a cemetery near the Leaning Tower of Pisa also successfully employed microbes. With the amazing variety of things bacteria can feed on, we've likely only scratched the surface of potential applications.
第三部分我们看到名词 cemetery 指墓地或是公墓，像是 Henry visits the cemetery every year in remembrance of his mother. Henry 每年都会造访墓园，缅怀他的母亲。接着我们看到单字 microbe， 这个字是名词，意思是微生物。我们可以说 Your body is home to a large number of microbes. 你的体内存在大量的微生物。最后我们看到片语 scratch the surface， 指触及皮毛或是隔靴搔痒。举例来说 Our discussion has only scratched the surface of all the possible uses of this technology. 我们针对这项科技所有可能用处的讨论只触及皮毛。或是 After a few days in the city, Laura felt she had only scratched the surface of what the town had to offer to travelers. 在该市待了几天之后 Laura 觉得她只接触了该城提供给游客的皮毛而已。另外以下补充2个包含 scratch 的相关片语。第一 from scratch 表示从头开始。我们可以说 Tammy built her successful computer business from scratch. Tammy 从零开始发展她成功的电脑事业。第二 scratch one's head 表示绞尽脑汁。例如 I scratched my head for a polite way to bring up the topic. 我绞尽脑汁在想提这个话题而不失礼的方式。
Okay, let's start talking about the third and final part of our lesson for today. Here's what Daniela Mana said. She said, it's better for our health, for the environment, and for the works of art. So I guess it has 3 benefits here. It's good for our health. It won't make us sick. It's also good for the environment. It won't cause pollution. And it's good for the works of art. It will clean them, and they'll look as good as new.
I guess we could call this a win-win-win situation.
Ooh, triple win, yeah.
3 wins in there and no downside, no negatives. It says her team is not alone in choosing this unusual method. Restoration efforts on the Milan Cathedral and the cemetery near the Leaning Tower of Pisa also successfully employed microbes. So there you go. It's a proven technology or a proven method. They've used it before and it's worked before. So that's why they say her team is not alone in choosing. If you're not alone in doing something, verb ing, that means you're not the only one. Others are doing this. And yeah, restoration, that's what art conservators do. They restore, they clean, they protect, they save old works of art, including many of the statues, I imagine, in the Milan Cathedral and also a cemetery there in Italy near the Leaning Tower of Pisa. A cathedral, this is just a really big church. I think the biggest type of church you can have in maybe the Catholic religion, and Anglicans also have cathedral. Think of St. Paul's Cathedral in London with its famous big dome or something like that. Notre Dame Cathedral, which of course caught on fire, unfortunately, a year or 2 ago. That's in Paris. And this is where a bishop would be one of the highest local church officials you could have. So when we think of cathedrals, we think of the biggest, most majestic and famous churches that you can kind of think of around the world. And also a cemetery, which would also have lots of statues, right?
It certainly would, especially if it's a cemetery for VIPs, like that Pope Clement VII there. He was a pretty important person, so of course you're going to have lots of marble statues in those cemeteries. So these people do restoration in those cemeteries and in cathedrals. Of course, I did want to mention that when I do see the word cathedral, I always think of Winchester Cathedral, you know, that famous corny song from the 60s there. But in any case, a cemetery is where we put the dead people, and a graveyard is more, it's not so formal, I guess. You would see a graveyard, say, in a scary movie or something, but most people are buried in cemeteries. That's the nicer word for that. And yes, this cemetery is near the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and they employed microbes, which are very tiny living things.
Basically like bacteria. And it says, with the amazing variety of things bacteria can feed on, we've likely only scratched the surface of potential applications. So there you go. The bacteria working just like if you got a few sheep or goats to help cut your grass. You know, they literally feed on grass so they can clean up your yard by chewing back on the grass. Well, the bacteria can chew back on the dirt and clean off lots of old things if you want to protect them and protect the environment at the same time. So as it says, we've likely only scratched the surface of potential applications. If you scratch the surface of something, we don't mean this literally like using your fingernail to scratch something. We're talking about you've only just begun something. You've only dipped your toe in, as it were, if we're comparing it to taking a swim. If you dip your toe in the pool, you only go swimming a tiny bit. If you only scratch the surface of a method or an idea or some kind of new experience, this, you've only just had a first taste. There's so much more that you can do with bacteria. So who knows? Maybe we'll have specialized bacterial spores that we can use to clean our toilets in the future. Release a few bacteria in your bathroom and you won't have to clean it because they'll be cleaning away without you knowing it.
Or they'll maybe eat away cancer cells in your body.
That would be even better.
That would be great. Or we could find bacteria that could actually feed on COVID-19, so we never have to deal with that again. But that's probably asking too much there. But again, yeah, there might be some other applications for bacteria cleaning works of art. You just never know. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's now listen to our Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始问读者 What's the first thing that springs to mind when you think of bacteria? 当你想到细菌时，脑海中浮现的第一件事是什么呢？好，句子里面用到 spring to mind 这个用语呢，要用事物来当主词，表达某事物浮现在脑海中，突然想到某事物。那么 spring 在这边是当动词哦，它有那种突然出现的意思。我们也可以用 come 或者是 leap 这些动词来代替。好，那顺便补充2个片语，像我们用 cross one's mind 可以用来表达某个念头或是想法闪过某人的脑海，像是 The thought has never crossed my mind， 我的脑海中从来没有闪过那个念头。而如果是 slip one's mind， 则是表达被某人忘记了。好，这个动词 slip 它原本有划过溜走的意思，那么 something slip one's mind 字面的意思是某事从某人心里溜走了，也就是说某人忘记某事了。接着读到课文第2部分的第一句，他写道 Those charged with returning the 600-year-old structure to its original state... 他是说那些受托要把这个有600年历史的结构体恢复到原本状态的人。好，那么课文是在 those 后面接了过去分词 charged， 那我们来学习相关用法。首先这个句型 those who 加动词是表达凡是怎么样的人，那些怎么样的人，其中的 those 就是指 those people 那些人。那我们后面接了 who 引导的关系子句来修饰先行词 those， 去表达说是那些怎么样的人，凡是怎么样的人。好，那要特别注意关系子句里面的动词是用复数型哦，像 those who are interested in adopting animals 是表达那些想要领养动物的人。还有啊，像前阵子不晓得同学有没有听过，有一部安吉丽娜·裘丽主演的电影叫做 Those Who Wish Me Dead， 台湾是翻译成那些要我死的人。好，在我们这2个例子当中，who 后面的动词分别是 are 还有 wish， 而不是单数动词 is 或是 wishes， 那这是要请同学们特别注意的地方。接着我们可以用 those who 加动词这样的句型，我们把它简化成 those 加上现在分词 VING 或是加过去分词 PP。怎么用呢？它就是呢，把关系代名词 who 省略，再把它后面的动词改成分词。动词如果是主动就改成现在分词，那被动就改成过去分词。像我们刚刚说的 those who are interested in adopting animals 就可以简化成 those interested in adopting animals。 还有那部电影啊，假设我们说 those who wish me dead 要把它简化，你也可以说成 those wishing me dead， 把 wish 改成现在分词 wishing。 好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Bacteria. Clean your teeth regularly to prevent the growth of bacteria. Marble. This statue has been carved out of beautiful white marble. Tomb. The historian examined the markings on the outside of the tomb. Compound. This substance will break down into harmless compounds over time. Cathedral. Many tourists visit the cathedral in the middle of the city. Cemetery. Laura's father is buried in the cemetery on the hill overlooking the ocean.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. Here's the question. Were you surprised to read that bacteria can function as a cleaner? Why or why not?
I thought that bacteria was generally not a good thing, or at least not used as a cleaner in this way, so I was very surprised to learn that bacteria can be used to clean things.
Well, actually, I already knew that bacteria could function as a cleaner because this was in the news a little while ago, and I was happy to see that something that's usually considered bad could actually be used for something good.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.